Hi everyone and welcome to Cherry Red TV. Since scoring a Europe-wide hit with her band Propaganda's first single in 1984, Claudia Brücken has enjoyed a long and varied musical career. She's covered many different sounds and lyrical themes, but always with a strong identity and a unique approach. Her latest project is a brand new album, Where Else?, which is released on the 6th of October 2014 via Cherry Red Records. She joins me today to look back across her career and forward to the new album. Claudia, welcome.
Hello.
Got quite a long career to go through in a reasonably short time, so we might have to time hop a little bit here and there, but can you briefly start by talking about growing up in Germany, your life there, and how music became a very strong part of it?
I started out making music when I was about 13, but that was more about being in a band. The idea of being in a band was more important in a way rather than making the music. So that was the start. It was always like music having to be fun, I wanted music to be fun. But seriously, I kind of got more into music when I was about 17. I started a band with Susanne Freitag, who was in Propaganda also. They were called the Topolinos, and we were like a bit like pre-Bangles.
Okay.
That's the kind of closest description I could kind of think of. Heavily influenced by synthesizer sounds already, because everybody at that time, 17, 18, when I was around that age, there was the whole analog sound going on. There
was quite a strong sort of electronic industrial scene in Germany, wasn't there?
That's right.
Kraftwerk had already come through, and bands like Eistersend and Neubauten were breaking through at that time as well.
Particularly in Düsseldorf, I think there were a lot of... there was like one street which was called the Ratinger Straße, which was just where everybody would meet on a Thursday night, and there were like all kind of pubs and clubs. And behind that street there was the University of Art. So there was a lot of artistic people. They were mingling with a lot of musicians also, and so it was something that was kind of melting together. We weren't really aware of it as such, but when I think about it, that's kind of what made it kind of very interesting. So there were a lot of Düsseldorf bands, like Der Plan, I don't know if you know that, or Duff. They're all coming from that same background, so that was great melting pot.
So kind of artists that were big influences on you when you were starting to find your way musically. I've read that you really, really admired David Bowie. He was a big influence on you. Totally,
yeah. I fell in love with his voice, but I also just loved the way that he reinvented himself with every album, and he just kind of went into a different character each time, and I really like that.
Is that kind of something that you've taken into your career, sort of elements of that reinvention, if you like?
I think I have, but I didn't really kind of think about it as much, but I think it's just kind of rubbed off. But also it has something to do with the nature of that I collaborate with a lot of people. So they're bringing a different identity in also. So it's that kind of combination that I find makes every project different, and interesting.
Yeah.
So the reinvention kind of happens kind of automatically, naturally, yeah.
So after being involved, as you say, in a couple of bands, in around I think 82, 83, you joined Propaganda, and you've said that quite a lot of things that happened around that time almost fell into your lap, if you like.
Yeah.
So how did that come about that you became part of the band?
Well, I was with Susanne in the band, still in the Topolinos, and Susanne at that time joined the band Propaganda, who were at that time Ralf Dörper and Andreas Stein and Susanne. They did a song. They did a cover version of a song from Throbbing Gristle, which was called Discipline, and they did a very Germanic version of it, which was basically heavy drum sound, kind of marching sound, and so then shouting over it, you know.
Right.
And that tape got the attention of Chris Bone, who was a writer at the New Musical Express.
Okay.
And he actually forwarded that tape to Paul Morley, who at that time was founding with Trevor Horn and Jill Sinclair Zang Tam Tam. So that's how the tape arrived there. And I think because it was such a different kind of song, it grabbed the attention of Trevor, and he said, "Oh, I'd like to kind of just check them out more." And so they started talking, and then basically Suzanne asked me if I would join the band, also if I would like to sing in the band, and they also found Michael Mertens. So it just, we just became a band at that point.
And I think, from what I've read, you kind of came in to provide sort of the melodic side of the vocal.
That's right.
If you like,
yes.
that was kind of the principal reason for
That's
asking you to join.
I mean, Suzanne, she has a great talking voice and great presence. But I was like, I was doing the melodies and the singing, and that kind of combination was something special. I think that made Propaganda sound very, unique.
So when you joined, sort of how far along the road would you say that the band were in terms of finding a sound and identity? Was there a clear vision for what the band was going to be at that early stage?
I think Ralph had very much a vision about context and lyrically what Propaganda should be like. And at the point when I joined, Propaganda was still like a German-speaking band and singing band. So only when we were then signed to ZTT, it was obviously clear. It was like, we wanted to obviously do something international. So we changed language. So our lyrics got translated into English, but they still worked. And because we were intending then at that point to do something internationally. But there was a strong identity already. So there was this analog sound with just like some warm melodies over it. So as a contrast, so keeping that light and dark. And there were elements of pop in there, but there was also, we were very much into kind of the arty side as well. So, and also being quite provocative at the time. So. And
then, as you say, you signed for ZTT in the UK, run by Paul Morley and Trevor Horn. Did you know much about the label or the characters involved before you signed?
Personally, I mean, I didn't really. I didn't have much of an idea of what it entails to make a record, or like the technical side of it. So, which in a way was kind of quite good, because I mean, I just went into Basing Street, it's like one of the best studios that are in London, and working with Trevor Horn. I mean, in a way, it was kind of quite good for me that I didn't know that much about the production side of a record, because it would have been quite intimidating. In that way, I just kind of fell into it and just went with it.
In particular, I think probably the rest of the band, you were still very young at that point, weren't you? I think you were still at school.
I was still in school, yeah. I was
when you
the
went
last
and recorded
year.
the first time.
Well, I was still in, I was just doing my kind of A-levels when Dr. Mabuse became a hit in Germany. I think it went to number 7. So it was kind of quite a bizarre thing. Yeah, I mean, it's just something that I didn't intend, didn't plan. But it was an amazing opportunity.
And as you say, that first single, Dr. Mabuse, which was a tribute to the famous 1920s German film villain, produced by Trevor Horn, who at that point had great success with ABC and the Lexicon of Love album. What was he like to work with as a producer?
It's my first experience to work with a producer. I never worked with a producer before, so I had no comparison. It was just kind of an amazing person. He had a certain vision. He was quite strict also, knew what he wanted to do, and tried to kind of get this out of one. I mean, what I loved about the time then, it was just anything was possible. He had an idea. He wanted to kind of follow his idea, and he'd make it happen, And I thought I was admiring that, Obviously, it was very costly as well, but that's a different story altogether. But I mean, he had a vision. He loved the story of Dr. Mabuse. He wanted to have an orchestra, and he wanted David Bedford to orchestrate it, and he made it happen. And
well, at the end of the process of making the record, was there any expectation sort of within the band that this is going to go and be a hit?
Well, I mean, once I was working with Trevor, I realized what kind of status he is, and how successful he was. And I mean, we obviously were hoping that this kind of would rub off a little bit.
The magic would rub off. Yeah.
Yes, and it did. I mean, people kind of bought into this setup, into this dream, actually, into this vision.
So was that quite a surreal experience for somebody quite young, still at school, and all of a sudden you've got a top 10 chart hit, and in several countries as well?
I mean, you say it. It was completely surreal. I had to ask when we did the video for Dr. Mabuse, I had to ask my art teacher to release me off school for 5 days to make the video. I mean, and she just said, "Go, girl!" Just yeah, she was brilliant. I mean, to work with Anton Corbijn, who did the video. It was his first video also, so it was just all an extreme kind of all these fantastic people kind of coming together and just creating something, and we were just kind of there was a lot of great positive energy there, and that's kind of how it kind of started. And obviously, I mean, I would have never planned it. You couldn't have planned something like this. It was just like a question of being there at the right time, in the right place, at the right moment,
And as sort of tends to happen when a band has a hit single, things then start to move quite quickly around you. So I think you took a decision between you fairly quickly that you were going to move to London. Was that kind of a big decision to leave Germany and base yourselves in London?
It wasn't really. I mean, it was like, it was just a natural thing again, and obviously I fell in love here also, so my private life just kind of led me here too. So I was ready to leave, and also the record was supposed to be, we were going to work on the album. So I needed to be there, so it all just kind of, again, it was just like naturally evolving for me to move here.
And as you started to work on the album, around the same time, Trevor Horn had massive success with Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
And I think his commitments there kind of took him away from continuing to work with you guys as a hands-on producer.
Yeah.
Was that a bit of a disappointment, having worked with him up to that point?
It wasn't, ZTT was a kind of a small kind of undertaking. So there was The Art of Noise, there was Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and there was us. And we were like all in the same building. The ZTT offices, they were also in Basing Street, in the same building. So it was kind of almost like a family adventure, really. And so Frankie were in one studio, Art of Noise were in the others, and we were in the rocket, we called it, in the spaceship, with Stephen Lipson, who I totally, absolutely adored working with.
Was he different to Trevor in the way that he worked with you?
His approach is very different, yes, I mean, of course, everybody is brings in a different. His way, how to go about things are very different from Trevor. I mean, but he was Trevor's part of Trevor's team, So he understood, and he was part of this of the ZTT sound. And he was the only person who could program the synclavier as well, which all the records were made on. So I was actually really welcoming working with Stephen, because I did all my vocal works with him. So for me, it wasn't as kind of clear cut. Trevor was gone, because Trevor would come in every night and listen to what we've done, and he was like the executive producer.
Okay.
Coming in and saying, okay, get rid of that, why don't you try that? And, bringing his bit in. So it wasn't as if he was gone. He was in the same building.
Was still there.
And he made it's still very present on the album.
So working with Stephen, as you say, you went on to record the second single, Jewel, which was also a big hit across Europe, and then onto the album, A Secret Wish. From sort of what I've read around the time of the recording, it seemed as though as a band you were given quite a lot of freedom to sort of try different things, experiment.
Yeah.
The budget wasn't particularly limited in any way. How did that kind of affect your approach towards working on the songs?
Well, I mean, that's what for me made it very, very interesting. There was like, there was no filter really. So at this point we were all kind of into sampling as well. So like proper sampling. So we sent people out to go to the harbor or to the zoo and sample animals and sample crashing industrial sounds. And we created our own library of sound. And yeah, Suzanne and I, we would just like do a take, and we would just like speak in German, and it was very experimental, and there was no, and we just kind of thought, let's see what we can use and what happens. And then obviously what was so brilliant about it is, so we brought in our kind of artiness and individual whatever we were good at. And there was Steve, who knew how to kind of bring it out, and also to kind of how to integrate it into something like into a musical journey or voyage or so.
Was it difficult sort of being a female in a band at that time? I've read some things where you said that Suzanne and yourself, sometimes you had to fight quite hard to be heard and respected within the setup.
That's right. That's right. It was, it was kind of unusual for women to do, especially synth pop as well. So we had to kind of sometimes get kind of quite annoyed to make ourselves heard, because there's lots of kind of male energy there, which we had to kind of, sometimes
find your way through.
Yeah, find our way through. And there was like, there was not as much respect there at that time, but we were young and we just kind of got there. I mean, people were really frightened of Suzanne and I. I mean, if you look at the cover of Duel or the 12-inch of Duel, we looked like, don't mess with us.
Intimidating presence.
Well, yeah, we wanted to just be something different to this kind of, kind of smooth pop. We just wanted to represent something that was more provocative. And I think it was also because of the children of the times that we were, because historically, we were the generation that we were in, and there was punk, and we were all kind of influenced by this. We were rebelling against our country. And so that was all just, these were elements that kind of came out in that album.
So the album came out and it was a top 20 hit in many countries across Europe. I think, unfortunately, around probably the time of promoting it and maybe working on some new material, there were tensions that were starting to rise within the band. It seemed from a distance as though some of that was being put on your relationship with Paul Morley, who you married in '85. Some of it was also put on the kind of terrible recording contract that you had with a label. Was Was that a very difficult time for you personally? Did you start to feel a little bit isolated from the rest of the group?
Yeah, well, my nature is like I just want to be a part of something, you know, so I'm kind of quite good with being in a team. I kind of feel like I work best as that. So I felt misunderstood. And I also was the youngest in the band, so I just, it's easy to kind of put the blame on something. Or, I mean, I can only say that Paul Morley, he really loved the band, and he was more, as well as he was a director of Zang Tam Tam, he was also a true artist, and he loved the bands that he signed. And maybe it was, I would kind of say we were not experienced enough, and we didn't have proper managerial advice. You know, how to put something, to hold something together. I mean, at the time, to be fair to Jill, she wanted to negotiate with us, with the band. Or the other band, the other three, but they were just adamant to leave, you know, so it was just, I was very attached, not only, obviously I had my ties with my husband then, but I also really loved the ZTT sound. I loved working with Stephen, and I wanted to continue that, you know. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go to Virgin. Sorry.
So was you know, was that sort of immediate aftermath of the band splitting? Was that quite a challenging time for you in terms of where am I going to go next as an artist?
I was a bit shocked because, I mean, we were still touring. We were still touring, and P Machinery became really successful in France in '86. So, and I just felt like we were just really understanding and getting the hang of how to present ourselves and how to be a live band also.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a shock to me that this had happened. I didn't see that coming, actually. So, yeah, it was a difficult decision for me to make, but yeah.
And then after Propaganda ended, you formed ACT with Scottish electronic musician Thomas Lear.
That's right,
who
yeah.
also recorded for Cherry Red as well in the past. Together, you released one album, which was Laughter, Tears and Rage in 1988. How did that collaboration begin, and how different was it from working with Propaganda?
Well, it began with Thomas wanting to be signed to ZTT, and he was in talks with Paul, and I at this point was like, what am I going to do next? And then Paul just said, why don't you two try working together? You know, and that's how my kind of collaboration thing, kind of theme started. And he lived locally to me, and we just tried working on ideas. Obviously, the sound would have been completely different because Propaganda were those people, and it's always the people that you work with who make this particular sound. So, I mean, it was never my intention to do a Propaganda on my own, you know? So I was just like fairly young still and adventurous, and I just said, let's try to make some music, and then those songs came out of us, you know.
And lyrically, some of them, the songs that were on that ACT album, were quite sort of socially and politically aware.
Yeah, yes.
Was that a conscious decision between the two of you, that that's something you wanted to press forward? I mean, it's quite a decadent period in British history, so was it something that you were kind of rallying against?
It just became really noticeable, you know, and we just kind of thought, we wrote Snobbery and Decay together, and it was kind of, we had there was some kind of statements. I think, the sign of the times kind of reflected into our music. It just kind of soaked it all up, you know, and the idea of ACT came about, and being more kind of observant about what's happening in the country.
And did you feel that, you know, though bringing those strands in was developing you as a writer?
Yes, yeah. I just kind of, I found a voice, you know, and again, I was still quite rebellious at this point, you know, and yeah, I kind of starting learning, you know, I take things, I like learning, I'm like an eternal student, you know, and I still love learning now. So.
And after ACT, you moved quite quickly to make your first solo album, which was Love and a Million Other Things, at the turn of the 90s. Were you kind of ready at that point to make a bit more of an individual statement, if you like?
You know, I was never really kind of thinking too much about things. You know, I don't really kind of sit there brooding about what my next move is or so. It's just, again, I teamed up with John Uriel, who was from Liverpool, and he kind of introduced me into a certain kind of sound, which was, there was a bit of soul in there as well, and I was very much into electronic music at this point still. It's just the nature of the songs, that's the way they developed, really. I wasn't sitting there thinking, I want to be this or that. It just kind of more kind of fell into place.
And I've read that you felt that that album was quite important to you because it was almost like the launch pad of the next stage of your career, if you like, sort of leaving propaganda behind and moving forward.
Well, it was also like a move from ZTT.
So you moved to Ireland.
Because I moved to Ireland, yeah. So yeah, I just thought it was time to just make my own, release something under my own name. Teamed up with the wonderful Pascal Gabriel as a producer. Yeah, just really had a great time making this album in Mayfair Studios in Primrose Hill, and also worked with the wonderful Steve Nye on three of the tracks on the album, who worked with Japan, who I'm a big fan of their work.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just felt like I'd come into my own light, really.
And unfortunately, having had a great experience making it, the guy that signed you at Ireland left as you were kind of starting the promotion and putting the album out.
Yeah, he actually left while we were still making the record. Okay. So that's why on 2 tracks we went completely experimental. We actually got the Bo Gamlin orchestra in. Don't know, they make sounds with fire. Okay. And really interesting. So, but we knew. I mean, when the MD left and his whole team left as well, and so yeah, I got kind of caught in record company politics. Yeah. As many artists do. Yeah, in their careers. I had no idea, though, I have to say. I mean, how that really worked. So that was a real eye opener.
And you then took something of a break from music for much of the 90s to concentrate on being a mother to your daughter Maddie. Was that a difficult decision for you to kind of break from the industry cycle, if you like? And were you still writing and recording during that period?
I was still doing, well, not at the beginning, because I also brought up Maddie by myself, so it was very time-consuming, but I still just kept writing, doing different kind of projects with different people, not under my own name, but I did a lot of projects. Again, I did a lot of collaborations over the years with various people.
You did a lot of kind of guest vocal appearances, didn't you, on working with various different bands and artists?
Yes, so I didn't really kind of stop, but I wasn't kind of concentrating like on one particular album as such.
And then in '98, there was something of a propaganda reunion.
Yes.
But things kind of stalled before you actually got to the point of releasing any music, or officially releasing any music, I think. You also tried again a few years ago in 2010. From a personal point of view, is that something that you would still maybe like to happen at some point in the future?
I'd always like that to happen. You know, it's just we did a great album, and I think there's some great things still in us. You know, I also don't want to kind of be defeated. You know, it's like it's just something that I've been willing to do, and to go out with Propaganda Live was such a great experience. We had, you know, Derek Forbes and Brian McGean from the Simple Minds with us. The energy on stage was just great, and I just like to kind of, I'd always make room for that, you know.
And personally, do you all kind of, with that sort of passage of time, do you all kind of get on quite well personally now?
Yes. We've actually, 30 years, you know, have kind of passed. It's enough time now, and I just want to have a good time. I don't really want to. I'm not interested in battling things out. You know,
So maybe
it's about a good energy, you know, that I want to create, and yeah. So maybe. Let's hope.
And also in the late 90s, you started working with Paul Humphreys, who's famously one half of OMD, which developed into releasing material under the name 1-2.
That's right.
Paul also became your partner in life as well. How different was that sort of working under those kind of circumstances?
When I worked, I mean, with Paul, actually in 2000, in the year 2000, asked me to do a tour with him as OMD, or as Paul Humphreys of OMD. He did a little American tour, and he asked me if I could join him to do some vocals. And it really, that experience really sparked of the desire for me again to do some more live work. So 1-2 was very much like a vehicle to kind of perform old songs, propaganda songs, and songs from my past, as like, you know, the Claudia Brücken material and ACT, and also OMD. So we wanted to, find a way of doing old material, but also introducing new material.
So it started out with a live basis before you actually started writing and recording?
That's right,
okay.
That's right. And then, because I don't want to just kind of look back all the time, you know, it's also important for me to develop as an artist, you know, and look into the future, you know, and be in the now. So that was always very important with 1-2, and I think that became like a platform for me to work the old thing and the new thing, to incorporate that.
And would you say that the 1-2 material was maybe the start of your sound becoming a little less bombastic and rhythm-based, a little bit more lush in the arrangements? And also lyrically, I think you started maybe to write from a bit more of a personal place then?
Well, there's a lot of Paul in there, so there's a lot of OMD kind of history in Paul's writing. He wrote songs. Well, yeah, his song that he wrote, "Sister," is very, very personal. Although, I mean, we were writing about a song about the theory of everything, so it's also very scientific. So, you know, it's whatever comes, really. I don't really kind of think about it too much.
You just let it flow as such in terms of the ideas.
You know, depends on what what story wants to be told.
And you also became the first sort of reasonably profile artist to release material exclusively on eBay.
Yes.
What was the kind of thinking behind that, and was it a successful strategy?
We just wanted to see what's possible. It was an experiment, you know, with the face of the industry changing like this, and we just thought, how can we sell directly music to the fans, and if so, how, and where are they? So it was just an experiment to see how it works, and it did work, but it's my God, it's so much hard work. It's so much hard work. I mean,
It's something that I think has become quite common now in the industry, is kind of selling direct to fans and fan bases. So in some ways you were pioneering, I guess, back then.
Yes, yeah, we were just kind of seeing what can be done, and yeah, just experimenting. But again, I mean, I think, you know, it becomes so much work in a way that you kind of forget to make music. You know, it can get so involved.
It's always important to keep the focus on
I always
on the
believe
music.
that there is also, you know, it's if you have a really good team, you know, you can do much better.
I wanted to talk about kind of two strands of your work which started quite a while back but have borne fruit kind of over the last decade or so. The first one of which is, as you've just said before, collaborating with other artists. I read somewhere that you said after Propaganda your kind of way to get through it and move forward was to work with other people. And that you know, as you said before, you like being part of a team. You've worked with several kind of high-profile collaborators over the years. Can you tell us sort of a bit about the ones that have given you the most pleasure?
I can't because I think every experience is just so unique, and just kind of leads you onto a different path. And I just love what other people bring into it. So it would really kind of not be fair to kind of just kind of.
You've enjoyed them all in their own unique way.
Totally, totally.
I mean, you've worked with the likes of Martin Gore from Depeche Mode.
Yeah,
you've worked with Andy Bell from Erasure, the Pet Shop Boys.
Yeah, I mean, to work with Martin was just really a kind of unique experience in a way, because Martin never had written anything with anybody else, and I kind of bossed him into it. He was like a neighbor of mine, and I started playing a song on the guitar and had the story and had like 3 or 4 chords, but I then got stuck, and because he was in the neighborhood, I just said, "Can you help?" And he said, "No, can't do. I've never done that." And I said, "Well, just try it and see, and if it doesn't work, don't worry about it." And then he actually called me back a day later and said, "I did it." You know, so in a way,
it's a quick change of mind.
Yeah, so no, that's just great. You know, I just like, you know, you just kind of experiment, throw out something and see what happens, and that's always been like the way I like working.
And do you find that kind of the dynamic of how much of it is you, how much of it is the other party, changes each time that you go into a new project?
Yeah, what I like about this is that you never know what comes out, you know, because you can't plan it, and I find that an interesting process, you know.
And the other strand that I kind of wanted to cover was your work covering other people's songs. You've done a lot of covers, going back to the Propaganda days when you covered Femme Fatale. You also worked with Paul Rutherford. You did a cover of the David Bowie song. How kind of important is it, first of all, to choose the right song when you're covering, and secondly, to kind of bring something new to it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's really important that it's going to become my own interpretation, and I also don't really want to kind of alienate it so much. I would still want it to kind of be. I want to kind of honor the original, yeah. So, but for me to choose a song, it's basically always the story that's being told, the artist that I adore, and trying to kind of make a new interpretation out of it. But these are like the elements that I watch out for. I don't see a point of covering a song and it being exactly like it. I like the original.
And you actually made 2 albums worth of covers. Another Language in 2005 and The Lost Are Found a couple of years ago.
Yes.
So is that something that you kind of really enjoy, is kind of taking other people's work and making it your own, you know, aside with working on your own material as well? Does that help in a way, the creating of your own material?
I think that's a really good question. First of all, I really love a good song. I love so there is a role of me as a singer, where I don't have to be the writer. I just love a good tune and a strong melody and a beautiful story. And so that's something I think that's really like most important to me, you know. And with The Lost Are Found, yeah, that was a real labor of love, as much as Another Language was, that I did with Andrew Poppy. But it's with The Lost Are Found, it's about, what was interesting about it is how people have very similar feelings, you know, over, some were written in the 60s, 70s and 80s and 90s, but they're expressing the same feeling. And I wanted to kind of bring that together, and I wanted to kind of demonstrate that in a way. So that was the kind of a concept, or part of a concept of The Lost Are Found.
And that album, again, in particular, was, you weren't necessarily picking big hit songs. You were almost trying to pick things that you thought were kind of songs that needed to come out, you know, more from people's back catalogue.
That's right. Also, yeah, songs that have like not been really heard, but they are beautiful songs nevertheless, and they should be heard. That was the idea. And also, I don't really want to kind of cover songs that so many people have covered already as well. So that's always one to look out for.
And have you ever kind of had the meeting with an artist whose song you've covered, and they've, you know, they've heard it and they've given you some kind of feedback? Has that ever happened?
Well, with the last album, with the one that I did with Stephen Hague, was amazing that all the artists, apart from David Lynch, they all commented. They all sent us messages about how much they enjoyed our version.
Oh, great.
So that was a real thrill.
Yeah, I can
real
imagine
thrill.
it was, yeah. So let's talk about the new album.
Yes.
Where else? Obvious first question, where did the title come from?
That was actually, I asked Paul Morley. I asked him whether he could help me finding a title. So I told him what it was about, and that the songs are kind of quite different, or the production is kind of quite different from what I normally do. And so he just suggested Where Else, and I went, that's perfect. That just suits it. So there is not like a big concept behind it. It's just like an idea being thrown and kind of go, yeah, that's good.
I think you said in some ways it kind of relates to where am I going next? Where else am I going to go?
Yes, that's right. It has many kind of meanings, and it's also elsewhere backwards. Which I kind of like the word play, the play of words. Yeah, and also because I am in such a kind of collaborating mode always, you know, it's just like, where does it draw me? What am I going to do now? What's she doing? So
your collaborator on this one was John Williams, who was he previously produced the likes of the House Martins and the Proclaimers, Petula Clark. How did this collaboration come about?
My live agent, Peter Price, I did actually ring him up or sent him an email in last October, saying, well, you know, I'm looking for people to work with. Have you got any idea? And he just said, let me have a little think, you know. And then a few days later, he said, you know, I think you should meet John. And then it took me he gave me John's details, and it took me about a month or so to kind of
build up the courage.
Yeah, build up the courage to just give him a ring, and just it was really sweet. I mean, I just kind of called John, and he said, I'm so pleased you called. And then we just met up, and John had a few songs lying about already, and I just really liked one song in particular, and I said, why don't we try this one out? And sang it, and John compiled it, and when I heard it, I just thought, I know that John and I can work really well together. And then we just started this intense, crazy period of writing, starting in January. And we we wrote for 3 or 4 months. And working every day, Monday, including Saturdays.
Wow.
From 11 to 5. And just kind of, just kept at it and wrote where else.
So what would you say that kind of John brings to this? What's sort of unique about John and his way of working, and compared to some of the other producers that you've worked with in the past?
Well, basically with John, we wrote all the songs on the guitar, either in his studio garden shed or at my place. So all the songs, I mean, that's something that I've never done, really, apart from Cloud 9, working with Martin on that song. Complete different experience. So we would work throw out ideas and experiment with melodies, and that whole process just took us 3 or 4 months to kind of get all the songs together. And kind of we were living and breathing these songs. You know, some of the songs or fragments of the songs, they were inside John since he was a student. You know, so it's just been a very organic process. And normally I work with backing tracks. You know, normally people send me like sequencers and just snippets of ideas, and I'm at home and I kind of just think it out. So that was a very hands-on, different experience altogether.
And it's, you know, I think other than one song, which is a cover of a Nick Drake song, it's kind of your first collection for a while of brand new material. Was that something that you kind of had at the beginning of the process as a definite idea? I want to, you know, go back to releasing original material after doing sort of a couple of albums of covers?
Yeah, no, I really wanted to have original songs, because I did a lot of work with covers, and I was ready to do own material again. And amazingly, you know, John had the ability and knowledge how to kind of bring this all out, and with his ideas that he had, you know, we managed to kind of just gel.
So where does your kind of inspiration come from for the lyrics on this album? I mean, you've been writing songs for a very long time. Is it still easy to get inspiration for lyrics?
Well, I think it's important to kind of talk to John about this also, because he just reminded me again how to write songs again, how to be experimental. And there was a lot. I think there was also over the years a bit of a block for me, you know, and the first song that John and I wrote was a song called Moon Song, and I kind of thought I was back in art school, you know. We just kind of went through my vinyl collection and kind of looking at titles, looking at book titles, and kind of throwing things out there, and just not being precious. It just kind of reminded me that it's just creativity is just such a playground, you know, and you have to become almost like get into a childlike state again, you know, and great John just reminded me of that.
And musically, as you said before, a lot of the sound is kind of rooted in sort of folk and country guitar, and I think you actually learned to play the guitar as part of the process as well. Was that something that was kind of difficult at the beginning, given, you know, the way that you'd worked in the past?
Well, it's something I always wanted to learn, but I've never really kind of stuck by it. You know, it's like whenever I thought I was getting good, I just stopped. So again, I think there must have been like a mental blockage of some sort. But yeah, this time, I mean, John just came in with an amplifier, guitar, and a tuner, and and you know, he just set me up and he said, "Here you go." And so the process that we would meet every day, I would just strum with him. I just kind of learn everything. So like the melodies, and yeah, it's a different process when you just kind of feel the song,
Yeah.
rather than just it happening here. Yeah, you know, if you do something every day, you will get better. You know, it is practice.
Yeah.
You know, it is practice. And I'm an eager learner. I love developing.
And is that something that you think you'll take forward now, kind of incorporating the guitar more into what you do as a writer and a performer?
Absolutely, totally. It's just something that I feel like I found it. You know, I found my instrument of expression.
So at this point in your career, coming back with an album of original material, what are your kind of hopes for that in kind of the musical climate that we're in 2014?
I just want the music to be heard by as many people as possible, you know, and I'd like to perform as well, because it's just something that I love doing, and
probably something that you haven't done enough of, I guess, that
Yeah.
you probably feel
Yeah.
across your career.
yeah, and I've got this amazing band as well. we've the two main musicians who were playing on the album, Yul Dasai and James Holloway. They're both part of the band, and they're amazing. And we're just having a great time. So I just like to kind of find the opportunities to kind of have people experience us as well in a live format. But yeah, obviously, you know, you make music and you want it to be heard by many people as possible.
So finally, in an interview that you did for the last album, you got a quote where you said, "What I am now today, I'm quite comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm quite happy with the place where I'm at the moment."
Mm-hmm.
Is that still the case?
Sure. Yeah.
And sort of looking forward, do you have any ideas where you're going next on this musical journey? Are there any sort of unfulfilled ambitions from a musical point of view?
Mm-hmm. Ideally, would like to love working with John still. I also would like to kind of maybe go into a bit of blues and
Okay.
a bit of maybe jazz, but not like, you know, still melodic. So there are territories that interest me.
So if there's some blues and jazz artists out there watching this,
You never know. Yeah,
you're open and ready.
But what I actually really like is when things come together, you know, when it's not just one thing or the other, and you kind of mix styles. It was kind of interesting with the Nick Drake song, Days Done, of the way it's structured. It's not your kind of like usual pop format, you know, pop song format. It's actually taking, you know, it's kind of quite freestyle. And so I'd like to kind of incorporate that also.
Well, thanks very much, Claudia. It's been an absolute pleasure looking back across your career, and we wish you the very best with the new album.
Thank you so much.
And join us more soon for some more Cherry Red TV.